Springfield's Talk 104.1. Welcome, everyone, to the show on a Monday. My name is Nick Reed. We are holding our happy hour off a week. I usually don't mention because I don't want it to be confusing when we are going to be postponing because then you just hear happy hour and like, well, I heard him talking about it, but then that leads to even more confusion if I don't mention it when we normally would have it, and it is going to be Good Friday. So as we have done in the past on Good Friday falling, which it seems to always happen, on the happy hour, we move it off. So we'll be having the happy hour the following Friday. We do have Man Show, though, don't we? Is that this?
That is correct.
Yeah, so the Man
What time are you working?
I think noon to 2.
Okay, I'm at 10 to 12:30, I think. Somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure noon to 2 is the time that I'm going to be out there. And we'll be having different shifts throughout the day. If you want to swing on by, let's see. What information do I have here? Ozark Empire Fairgrounds, ice cold Coors beer, mouth-watering barbecue from the Grill Guys Vegan Recovery Center, moonshine beer and bourbon. This is getting better as I read it. Bourbon samples, samples. It depends on how dedicated you are. Test your skills at the Kinney Billiards Game Room.
Oh, you're going to love that.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if there'll be any pinball. There's usually a couple pinball machines, which I love pinball. Feel the adrenaline of the new Harley from Renegade Harley-Davidson and witness Iron Alliance's live armored combat. Oh, yes. Here it says you will be there from 10 till 12:30. Oh, it says 12:30 to 2:30. Is that right?
Yeah,
I don't care either which way.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, that's fine. Yep, sounds good. All right. All the relevant information was there, and I suspect you are the one who put that information in there.
That is correct.
Excellent. All right. The Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. A couple of, I wouldn't say competing events, but I just find the two cultures on display of the so-called No Kings event taking place, and then the same weekend, the thousands that gathered for fundraising purposes to support the family of the 2 Christian County deputies who were killed and the 2 other deputies that were wounded in late February. And it is such a clear demonstration of the difference in approach and attitude in a desire to actually do something meaningful as opposed to just virtue signaling and the level of positivity when you are at an event that came out of a horrific tragedy. And people coming together, thousands of people, just to rally for families that most of the people didn't even know. A lot of them obviously did know or do know the families. And just the inspirational positivity and the tears and the joy, this really not uncommon symphony of different emotions, but it's just this togetherness and doing something positive and meaningful. And then you look at some of the footage of across this country, these No Kings events in which you've got screaming and yelling. You have, just some of the most profane presentations. It's just a darkness and an emptiness that you sense there. Now, of course, some areas of the country, it's a little more stark than it is others. I felt as if Springfield failed to really step it up in terms of the extreme lunacy that has been on display at some of these different events. In other words, no, I didn't see yet, anyhow, anybody from Springfield making national news. There's some woman at one event, and she is making the rounds because she was dressed as a chicken, just clucking at people. You have in Chicago this sort of, I don't know if he's actually conservative or not, but he was, quote, he got himself in one of the protests in Chicago, and the sign that he was carrying, leading it, was something about No Kings, but then he flipped it over, and it was something quite insulting.
We played his audio before.
Okay, yeah, we have played.
I can't think of his name right now.
I can't either. He went, he's one of these, I would say, a humorist that makes points about how absurd the left are by pretending to be one and then having conversations with other people on the left as they expose themselves. Um, so anyhow, there was just a lot going on over the weekend, and for us in this area in the Ozarks, having just that side by side, different cultures, different events. One very pro America and coming together and looking past differences. It just so different than the darkness and how with the no kings, how horrible the country is, and we live in a dictatorship. Interestingly enough, all of it just sort of fantasy in their minds. There's also, I noticed, this contradiction within the No Kings of these people that say they're protesting because Donald Trump is a king, but then you have other Democrats that are out there saying Donald Trump's not a king. Even a Democrat senator, Haruno or whatever her name is from Hawaii, made some posting. Donald Trump's not a king. He never has been. He never will be. And so her social media then exploded with conservatives and Trump supporters going, yeah, yes, we know. What is going on with you guys? Is he a king? Is he not a king? Is he a wannabe a king? Will he never be a king? They can't even keep their messages straight themselves. We'll play some audio of some of those events coming up, and I think we'll have Congressman Burleson today. He was at the fundraising event yesterday. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. I think the broadcast got pulled off without a hitch.
They're good.
Seemed like it did.
Good.
I didn't get any messages saying we can't hear you or you're not on air. It was so bright outside. Some of the displays that I rely on to see what's going on in terms of levels were not really visible. And so I was just sort of going blind on it, but I think it went well. Huge thanks to all the folks involved there, and of course Luke and Heather Davis that were instrumental, as were so many others in pulling off that event. I don't know dollar amount, how much was raised overall, and hopefully that is something that they will at some point reveal, because people participate in that stuff, and they of course would like to know what sort of level of success that it was. We've got weather coming up in a moment. Right now, the latest news update. Well, now we haven't had headlines like this, it seems like, for a bit. This is NBC Chicago, though I saw the same headline: NBC Miami, NBC Philadelphia, all of the uh, NBC affiliates. Records shattered for the hottest day in March. Quote, "This is what climate change looks like." Oh, here we go. It's been a while since we've been treated to this sort of news story. And of course, it never goes away. But it does seem as if the summertime, or getting into summertime news reports in which we have a pop of a high temperature here or there, and then suddenly tying it directly to what used to be called global warming. But of course, that became very inconvenient, given that oftentimes we had record cold temperatures and a lot more snow than usual and ice storms. And so trying to attribute that to global warming became somewhat problematic in terms of marketing for the left. In fact, I remember there was supposed to be a showing at one point of Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore's mockumentary about the environment, and it had to be postponed because of record levels of snow or something, or it was so cold that day in New York, and so just the marketing of all things global warming when we were dealing with severely frigid temperatures became problematic. So they just said climate change. That way, anything that happens, you can just say, well, see, climate change. See it? Are you denying that things are changing? Are you denying this? And then it just, as they do with all words, whenever the truth is not on their side, they just change the meaning of words. And they change their description of things in order to fit their narrative. And they seem to have settled on climate change because, we've gone through all sorts of different variations. There was global freezing for a period of time, depending on your age. You may remember that. Then, because of the same problem they had with the conflict of the title that is meant to scare people and how oftentimes it was really warm. And so global freezing was something that people, they thought, well, maybe there's a lack of clarity and truth on this. And so they made the mistake of just swinging the other way, going to global warming, and then settled upon, let's just say climate change. That way, whatever happens, we can say it's climate change. So the piece, and this NBC affiliates carried this, which the story originates from the Associated Press, writing the dangerous heat wave that shattered March records all over the U.S. Southwest was more than just another extreme weather blip. It was the latest, next-level weather wildness that is occurring even more frequently as Earth's warming builds. Experts say unprecedented and deadly weather extremes that sometimes strike at abnormal times and in unusual places are putting more people in danger. For example, the Southwest is used to coping with deadly heat, but not months ahead of schedule, including a 112-degree Fahrenheit reading in 2 Arizona communities on March 20th. Yes, 2. That smashed the highest March temperatures recorded in the U.S. 2 places in Southern California also hit the same temperature. All 4 spots are clustered within 50 miles of each other. University of Victoria climate scientist Andrew Weaver said this is what climate change looks like in real time. Extremes, pushing beyond the bounds we once thought were possible. What used to be unprecedented events are now reoccurring features of a warming world. March's heat wave, or heat, would have been virtually impossible without human-caused climate change, according to a report by World Weather Attribution, an international group of scientists who study the causes of extreme weather events. Well, now it sounds all very official, doesn't it? I mean, after all, World Weather Attribution, and this is an international group of scientists with a consensus, so there can't be anything about this that is to be suspicious of. Now, first off, when it comes to, we hear these, it's the highest March temperature recorded in the U.S. The recordings of such temperatures are oftentimes estimates, but even outside of that, they aren't even a blip on the radar in terms of the amount of time, that the Earth has existed. Whether you want to believe it's thousands of years or billions of years, the actual recordings, actually, they go back to like the 1800s. I mean, it is such a small portion of time to even label it as, the highest ever, but to throw in there in recorded history. They know what they're doing. They know that is a context that gets lost on people, because the average person doesn't realize how tiny the amount of time that we have existed, the planet has existed, the climate has existed, that there has actually been any sort of recording. So you just say recorded history, and that is really irrelevant, because it does not give us any idea or any sense of what our world has been through. Now, we do know the answers to these questions because of geologists and other scientists, that we have these climate changes that have occurred before there was ever even an automobile, that were occurring well before any of these measurements were being recorded. You've heard of the Ice Age. That was a period of time when we were dealing with a climate much different than it is today, and that it has been since recorded history in terms of these temperatures. So anytime they start talking about the recorded history, and it's the hottest on record, that record is so small it is not scientifically relevant in any way, shape, or form. And so people, particularly so-called scientists who utilize that as some sort of measuring stick, are being dishonest. Now, I thought it would be interesting to look up World Weather Attribution, otherwise known as the WWA, because this is the organization that the Associated Press relied upon. And it is described as an international research organization that publishes reports that claim to quantify how climate change caused by humans affected the severity of weather events. According to Columbia Climate School, it uses counterfactual models based on a model of an imaginary world using limited data. Its research is used by major news publications like the Associated Press, and then carried by NBC from the story I just read you, to associate severe weather events with climate change, including the Weather Channel, the British Broadcasting Corporation, and the Washington Post. World Weather Attribution is a nonprofit research organization that was founded in 2014 by Frederick Otto Geert-Jan von Oldenborough and Climate Central. It uses so-called models to estimate how much of the severity of a weather event may be attributed to climate change, and it advocates then for environmental policies that it claims its models show would have reduced the severity of the weather events. WWA publishes its research within days or weeks of major weather events, attempting to quantify the association with the severity of the event and what it describes as human-induced climate change. It uses the trends of its models to justify associating excessive deaths that occurred during extreme weather events, such as excessive drowning deaths during a heat wave. WWA receives fundings from the Grantham Institute, European Climate Foundation, and the Bezos Earth Foundation. Now, there's an interesting tie, and we're going to take a break here, because one of the outlets that uses this organization as an authority is the Washington Post, which is owned by Jeff Bezos, who then funnels tens of millions of dollars back to these so-called scientists that come up with these reports that he then publishes in the Washington Post. And so it's just, and they don't peer review anything. The reason that they say they don't peer review anything is because they want to make sure that it gets out there as fast as possible. And they don't have time to do all that scientific stuff and really, have an analytical scientific approach to whether what they're saying is true or not, because it's too important to not get out immediately during the climate event, because if it comes out too late, you may not associate the climate change with the event that's going on in the time. So they don't have time to do all this scientific work in order to determine whether or not there's any truth to it whatsoever. So more on, and by the way, this is the sort of thing that the news outlets should be talking about. If you are a news outlet, instead of simply utilizing an organization like the World Weather Attribution as an authority, when it comes to this sort of thing, you might want to just take a moment or two and look into the organization. and see how it is that they do their research. See if they are respected by their peers. In this case, there are no peer reviews whatsoever. And see where the money's coming from and how it's just very cyclical in nature. And that, I think, is probably a really worthwhile thing to look into, as opposed to just blindly utilizing some organization that validates your belief system so that you can write stories surrounding it. The Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. All right, we'll get to some of your text messages coming up. From the Pyramid Roofing Company text line, we talk about a number of these stories that the AP had out over the weekend with the headlines, records shattered for the hottest day in March. Quote, this is what climate change looks like. And the reliance on an organization called the World Weather Attribution, which is presented as the foremost authority when it comes to these issues, when in fact they are not. They don't peer review. Their money comes from what many would consider to be very suspect places, and they are very out of line when it comes to a scientific approach on these things. And so it's a number of different stories here. One, it is about these organizations that, I mean, the story that's printed isn't. The conversation we're having is about how these organizations get utilized as, it's just like COVID. Here's an expert, just believe us. Oh, here's a group of experts. They're in a group. They're wearing lab coats, and so you got to believe that they're authorities. And if you don't believe them, then you're anti-science, without any curiosity as to who these people are. And that's the another story in this is the fact that because of a desire to believe these things are true, the unwillingness to do any sort of checking on these organizations because it validates a belief that's already baked in. And so you just get this redundancy of the same sort of story that really isn't factually based so often. So again, some of your text messages as well coming up here in just a couple of moments. Latest traffic update.
Fields Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozark's first meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 84. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 62. For your Tuesday, partly sunny with a high near 83. And taking a look at Wednesday, we'll see a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high near 81.
Talking about the excuse me, headlines popping back up over the week in Associated Press, and you get a couple of so-called record high temperatures, and this is proof of climate change that is caused by man. And the usage of, in the latest rounds of stories, the World Weather Attribution, known as WWA, as an authority on this. And I'm always very curious when you have these news outlets rely on some sort of organization about the organization itself. And we've learned to be suspect of this, particularly during COVID. And over the years of these experts telling us all these things are going to happen that never happen. It's not only scientifically categorized. You see it with the economy. You see it on so many different levels where the media will have on this talking head or will go to some sort of expert in the field. We're told they're an expert, yet you look at their past predictions and they are wrong with an amazing consistency. And it then prompts one to ask, what in the heck do you actually consider to be an expert? Some of your messages, I remember in elementary school in the 70s, the coming ice age that never happened. And we've talked about this fun trip down memory lane, depending on the generation you grew up in. For me, it was acid rain and a hole in the ozone layer. Those were the two big ones in elementary school and throughout public education that was always told was going to happen. And with these timelines, and if we don't turn it around, it's going to be too late. But then we always hit those benchmarks. And this is why, particularly with the internet and the availability of these predictions that have been made in the past, people increasingly, even if they believe that there's something to it, you find that they're not worried about it. This oftentimes is a contradiction that confounds climate alarmists. There will be surveys that will show a significant number of people believe that man is responsible for climate change, but then when it comes to whether people are actually worried about it, it's at the bottom of the barrel. And so the proponents of the scaring, trying to scare all of us into believing the end times regarding the climate and we're going to kill ourselves, find themselves quite frustrated because they don't understand that disconnect. And it's because most people have been through this before. We've been through being told this thing is going to happen. We have only 10 years in order to turn this around. If we don't, it's going to be too late. And then the 10-year mark comes, and then, well, it's another 10 years. And it's crying wolf. Another text, hey, Nick, actual geologist here, recorded weather is about the same as taking a single drop of water from the ocean to characterize all water on Earth. Humans themselves make up less than 1% of time compared to the age of the planet. And that is, I think, it is such an important, significant point. Because they always will use that verbiage of, it's the hottest on record. Oh, it's the hottest on record. And as this geologist who texted in pointed out, that because of the vastness of time that has existed compared to the tiniest little amount of time in which measurement has been done. It's like taking a drop of water out of the ocean and then saying this is a representation of all water across the planet. Well, of course it's not. That's silliness. But it does not stop the climate change alarmist and these media outlets from continuously referencing those things. And while they can tell themselves that technically it is accurate, but it is misleading because people don't understand that in terms of that measurement, it in no way, shape, or form can tell us anything about the climate cycles of the planet. Let's see. The organization was really bummed out that the Palisades fires were caused by an arsonist instead of climate change. Maybe climate change caused the guy to take up arson as his cause. Climate is 30-year calculation recording the changes of temps. The changes in temperature could be related to location of city thermometers, heat island effect. And there are a number of different reasons that in a particular region you may have temperatures increase that, asphalt, for example, it isn't an actual global change that is occurring at all, but more of just a regional one in terms of where it is that those temperatures are being gauged. Now, a bit more information about the world weather attribution that is used by the Associated Press as an authority on this. Back in 2023, Spain's Science Media Center published an analysis of world weather attribution's research methods that noted that the attribution studies WWA performs are unable to accurately identify the cause of a weather event's increased severity. This according to the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, known as NOAA. The analysis noted that NOAA also states that so-called global warming and climate change cannot be identified as having caused a weather event, as there are too many factors with an undetermined influence on weather events. Science Media Center also noted that WWA does not follow peer review processes and instead claims that its methodology aligns with peer review processes and thereby asserts itself as authoritative. It also reveals that it can potentially quantify the likelihood of select extreme weather events occurring, but because of unquantifiable factors outside of human-derived carbon emissions, it cannot guarantee the accuracy that the emissions specifically influence the severity of the event. So some admissions there. They're acknowledging that, well, yeah, we can't really say it's necessarily due to man. By circumventing peer review processes, WWA claims it is able to publish more timely reports, which it states it does to be able to more effectively advocate for environmental policy while weather events are prominent topics in the media. So they acknowledge what they're doing here. They've acknowledged the reason that they don't take the steps to determine whether or not their findings have any basis in science is because they are an advocacy organization. And in their own assessment, they need to get those reports out very, very quickly without having any sort of scientific peer review to, quote, be able to make more effectively advocates for environmental policy. In October of 2024, the Washington Free Beacon reported that Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos made a $10 million grant to World Weather Attribution in 2022 through his nonprofit Bezos Earth Fund. It also reports that since 2021, the Washington Post has cited that organization in over 70 posts, noting that WWA's research is subject to controversy as news outlets do not note that it is non-peer-reviewed, and the Washington Free Beacon reported on experts who describe WWA's research as, quote, rushed, partisan, and incomplete. The Free Beacon also stated that there are concerns over conflicts of interest as WWA receives funding from owners of media organizations which then use their research to support left-of-center reporting on climate change. And they go into a little further depth here in the analysis of the leadership of the organization, but ultimately what it boils down to is this is a huge part of the problem. The media determines expertise based off of the validation of their own political beliefs. We saw it with COVID. You could have someone like Fauci that would later admit so much of what we were told were life and death decisions and behaviors like standing 6 feet apart had no basis whatsoever in science. Fauci admitted this. Fauci has a long history of giving really, really bad advice as a so-called expert when it comes to health and some of these more widespread diseases or disorders going all the way back to the 80s. Yet he is still used as an expert because he is a left-wing individual that advocates for more government control and government taking away people's rights to make decisions for themselves when it comes to their own health. Let's not forget he's the man who said, I am science. If you disagree with me, you're disagreeing with science. And so you can have these organizations like the WWA that fully acknowledge that they are an advocacy organization and that they do not have scientific peer review of their research done because they wouldn't be able to get it out in time to advocate for their government solution causes. They get money from the very people that then use them as experts in their articles, and still, this is the negligence or the dishonesty of the media, these media outlets will use them as experts. And then call you a science denier for dare requiring some sort of scientific approach when it comes to this sort of stuff. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company text line. I don't believe in man-made climate change, but I don't believe we are being very good stewards of Earth. And yeah, there are a number of different things, if you will, that are going on at the same time, in which there's oftentimes an attempt to conflate them. And I think that this text is reflective of the fact that generally, who are cast as being anti-science because they don't buy into all of this hype, when it comes to their own personal behavior, are better stewards of the planet. You know, it's amazing. You'll have some, farmer, some ranch hand, some person that goes out hunting that is considered to be some sort of anti-science right-wing lunatic that does far greater or puts in far greater effort to actually maintain the planet and has a real true appreciation for it in terms of meaningful ways, while that you get these individuals on the left, many of which have never even been in a forest, will get some sort of electric vehicle and feel as if they are actually doing something for the planet. And I don't have anything against electric vehicles other than the presentation of electric vehicles that somehow they are zero emission, which is a total and complete joke. Yes, the emissions don't come out of the tailpipe. They are in other forms, for example, getting the power, the juice into the vehicle itself. I mean, that is power that has to be generated, not to mention the extremely dangerous, environmentally and humanitarianly speaking, dangerous process of extracting some of those rare minerals out of the earth. Increasingly, there have been numerous studies that have shown that there is no beneficial impact to the environment when it comes to many of these vehicles. And in some of the research shows that they could actually be more damaging to the environment than the regular good old-fashioned gas guzzler. And so, like so much other stuff with the left, they will take on these virtuous personas, and they want to lecture everyone else in the world, and they want to call you anti-science if you don't agree with them. Yet it's the people that tend to be more conservative that actually demonstrate a greater care for the planet. Just go to any left-wing event that is held in one location on some sort of fairgrounds, and then go to a quote conservative and look at how the place is left afterwards. There was a story about the Oscars. I think it was the Oscars a few weeks ago, and some of these left-wing environmentalists were appalled at just the filth and the trash that the rich celebrities left laying around, and that's not uncommon at any of these different, even sometimes environmental events that have been held. There were a number of stories, I think it was the last Earth Day, and when these left-wing activists would leave on Earth Day, there would be trash everywhere. I mean, all over the place. I think that if you were to really gauge the behavior and the appreciation for Earth based off of behavior, you would find that people that are generally more conservative, the people who work the earth, the people who go out and hunt on the planet, that those individuals actually demonstrate a greater appreciation for the planet than people on the left who, slap some sort of hug the earth bumper sticker on their car and have no trouble leaving a place trashed after some sort of an event. Not to mention the rich celebrities on the left who will fly their jets across the country to get their favorite donut or dispatch someone else to do it while lecturing the rest of us on keeping our thermostats at a certain level so that we can all be in this thing together. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com. All of your home loan needs, refinancing needs, reverse mortgage needs. Well, what is a reverse mortgage? That isn't what I think a lot of people might think that it is. I know one of the stories that was relayed to us by, it was either Anthony or Alex Carricker, was one of you all that ended up doing a reverse mortgage that didn't work out necessarily the way it was planned, but an even better situation. And there's this belief a lot of folks have that reverse mortgage is, well, you're about ready to go into assisted living and you have your home paid off. And so in order to pay for the assisted living, you transfer your home into some, and then if the money runs out, you're going to be kicked out on the street. That's a lot of inaccurate information there. So to best find out if it is for you, or just, again, maybe your very first crack at the bat, getting that home loan, and you don't know if you qualify, the Carrickers and their team are going to get you the information you need. In fact, while you can go to the site and learn much of that information, up in the upper sort of center left-hand corner is Alex Carricker's name and his cell phone number. Then there's Anthony Carricker's name and his cell phone number, and you can call that 7 days a week. Reach out. Ask them any questions that you may have. They're a tremendous resource, and it all starts at iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. There's a great video that was circulating over the weekend, and I'm guessing it's probably going to get overshadowed by some of the unserious No Kings protesters dressed as chickens and dinosaurs and unicorns. And, of course, thrown in there is a call to murder ICE agents by some of the Democrat activists because, of course, you got to have a little bit of that spice in there, of course. But prior to that, there was... It's always the left-wingers that post this stuff themselves thinking that they are going to look good. And it was some left-wing activist filming these ICE agents that were walking through LaGuardia Airport. And the man is, I don't know if you'd use the term harassing them. They did not seem to feel harassed, the point being that they were laughing at this guy as he's following them and he's filming them saying, you guys are the foot soldiers of a fascist regime, right? Is that not what it is? And then, of course, they're kind of, a couple of them are ignoring him. There's one ICE agent behind them that starts just cracking up laughing. And this annoys the left-wing activist, asking, you think this is funny? What's so funny about this? The added bonus to all of this, while you don't know for sure, the voice, I'm going to stereotype here, the voice of the person that is filming this, thinking that they're doing something heroic, in my mind, it's some anemic-looking white guy that probably isn't going to find himself landing on the cover of any magazines. And the ICE agents are these pretty buff, good-looking black guys. One of them even has sort of like not dreadlocks, but braided hair, which I kind of thought was surprising, given that he's an ICE agent. Shows what I know about what it is that ICE agents are and are not allowed to have in terms of hairstyles. But it was circulating around, and I'm sure it still is. We'll get it posted so you can check it out. Just the whole nature and the absurdity of it, and this guy that just sounded like this puny little, you guys think this is funny? You're the foot soldiers. It also shows that ICE isn't doing what Democrats said they were going to do in the airports, and that is drag people away, disappear people. They were going to be shooting people that were just trying to get to their flights, and even the so-called fear of that is being demonstrated as something that doesn't exist. Because if that's really, truly the environment that was being created, you wouldn't have these weak little lefties following ICE agents around, harassing them at the airports. Springfield's Talk 1041, and good day, everyone. Welcome to the show. The Man Show coming up at the Ozark Empire Fairgrounds this Saturday, rather. Sarah and I will be out there throughout different times of the day, and it sounds like it's going to be a real banger. A lot of fun. If you haven't gotten signed up for Lunch Bunch with Godfather's Pizza, you can go to KSGF.com and you can do that. We're not doing ticket giveaway, right, for the Man Show?
Actually, we are.
We
got
are?
tickets to see Bush.
Oh.
Yes.
Was that in my notes over here?
No, it was not.
Okay. So
no. So basically, we had a concert giveaway.
Oh, it's while we're there on location.
Yes,
yeah. Okay. Got
correct.
it. Yeah.
No, were you talking about like actual tickets to the Man Show?
Yeah.
I don't know how much it is to get in. I don't think it's very much.
Yeah,
I don't think it's enough for a ticket giveaway, but. Yeah, we will have tickets to give away on site.
That's right, for
there
Bush.
We
go. They're going to be at...
Oh, no. I don't remember. I think it's Black Oak.
Okay.
I'll have to look it up.
But you can come by and, get registered for that. And I imagine at the end of the day, we'll draw and contact you. If you happen to win. All right, I think we should be able to talk...
Ozark's amp. I was close.
Okay, yeah.
I knew it was an amp.
So that's the one in Camdenton, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have not been to that venue yet.
I haven't either.
We'll chat with Congressman Burleson coming up here. I think we should be able to get a hold of him. And one of the things I just want to ask him is so the Senate, we talked about this last week, they voted on the SAVE Act, but didn't really vote to do anything with it. Like it didn't fund ICE. Or no, it's Homeland Security funding. And this stuff all gets kind of cobbled together. It gets confused. This is part of the reason I want to have them on. And then they're like, oh, hey, we sent it back to the House. And the House is like, no, this is not. And Mike Johnson, actually, some of his comments, he sounded angry. And for him to sound angry it's just not his temperament, generally speaking. And really ripping on some of these Republicans in the Senate. And you've got a lot of Republican members of Congress that are now really coming out against the leadership. Some, in fact, calling for a change in leadership. I think overall, most of the Republicans in the Senate are just bad. And increasingly, it seems as if there is an attempt to cover for a lot of these Republicans that don't want to have to vote on some of this stuff because they are in line with the 20% of the extreme on this 80-20 issue when it comes to so much of this stuff. And that they really, when it comes down to it, are on the same side as the Democrats. And so a lot of this attempt to keep away from a talking filibuster and downplaying it and trying to keep expectations realistic is really more about not forcing some Republicans who are out there talking like they support this stuff, having to prevent them or attempting to prevent them from having to actually vote because they don't want to vote in favor of some of this stuff that 80% of Americans are behind. And so I don't know when this stuff's going to happen, and maybe that's something Congressman Burleson can answer, though he is on the House side. I think he's obviously somewhat in tune with what could potentially be happening over on the Senate side. So we'll chat with him on that. And then I do want to talk about some of the No King stuff going on over the weekend. I love this posting, and some of this is so obvious, but it's so true. And there was a posting made by someone regarding No Kings, and they said, remember when King Trump shut down your church and business, stopped you from seeing loved ones in the hospital, fired you for not getting a vaccine, banned you on social media for your speech, nominated a presidential candidate without a single vote, indicted opposition's political president several times and tried to take him off the ballot, and fined you for not buying health insurance? Yeah. Oh, no, wait, that wasn't Trump. That was, Joe Biden. And of course, Obama with the Obamacare and the fining you for not buying health insurance, which Trump undid that component, I believe by way of executive order. But it is so crazy, the delusional world these people live in. And like I said, if you want to believe in your mind that Donald Trump is behaving as a king, then you have to, if you're an honest person, recognize that what the Democrats do is 1,000 times worse. I mean, that was just a small listing of all of the things the Democrats have done when they were in charge. You cannot list something that Donald Trump has done that even holds a candle to the authoritarian nature of the Democrat Party, which is who these people support. They run around saying no kings. I saw one, there was a gal, I'm sure she was conservative or Trump supporter, maybe libertarian, I don't know. But, interviewing these people, and this is what actual journalists should do, but it turns out that it's the independent journalists that do it, that probe some of the comments they make, like Donald Trump being a dictator, but then noting, well, how is it that you really reconcile your no king mantra with the fact that the Democrats just overturned the election of Joe Biden and then handpicked Kamala Harris and anointed her to be the nominee? And whenever the left gets asked about these, it's always the same. I'm done with this conversation. Oh, I see where you're going with this. You're going to ask your trick questions. They're not trick questions. That's reality. Everything you claim you are against, you support times 1,000 when you go out there and support Democrats. That's just a reality. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's why a lot of people think you're just dumb. See you as stupid, as brainless, as brainwashed. And you combine the fact that you embrace a political party that outdoes Trump 1,000 to 1 when it comes to, quote, authoritarianism, with the fact that you got elderly people singing bad songs and then people dressed as unicorns in inflatable costumes. And you wonder why it is people think you're just flat out weird. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 84. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 62. For your Tuesday, partly sunny with a high near 83. And taking a look at Wednesday, we'll see a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high near 81.
Congressman Burleson joining us this morning. I thought yesterday's event, the fundraiser for the Christian County deputies, their families, and the injured officers, was a fantastic event. I mentioned this. You were there. You spoke a bit. And for an event like that it was put together in a couple of weeks, I don't know if it stood out to other people how not only many people were there, but how well it was all run. I mean, it was just like this had been done
Yeah,
1,000 times over. It was impressive.
it was impressive, extremely impressive, and it was amazing to see the community respond the way that they did. And I really, our mutual friend Luke and Heather Davis, they did an amazing job organizing it, and obviously they had help, but
Yeah.
just wanted to drop their names because he's been a long time, supporter of the show and listener. But that was an amazing experience.
Yeah, it's such on one hand, a bit of a contradiction because of why it's occurring, but events like that, you just get such a feeling of goodness and love and people, nobody trying to take credit for, like you, as you noted, they were so instrumental in this, but everyone that was involved wanted to make sure that everyone, that no one was really trying to take credit for anything, I guess is the best way to put it. And that's not always the case
Yeah,
with events like this. People oftentimes really want to tout that they put it on, and there's just none of that. It was all about the cause.
it was. They raised a lot of money, and look, who could be more deserving than these families? During, as I was trying to think of what I was going to say, I was reflecting on the things that I've gone through last week in D.C. and just witnessing cowardice firsthand. Politicians who just do what I think the Senate did, which is just tuck their tail between their legs and walk away in shame to go on their vacations. And when you juxtapose that to the fact that we're there trying to honor people who, when things got really tough, they ran to it.
Yeah.
They ran to the conflict and in some cases sacrificed their lives. Certainly, and others were shot to save, make this community a safer community and actually truly do what they're called to do, which is serve the community. And so it's just, that's why, it was great to see that is being honored and recognized.
Yeah. All right, as best as you can, I know obviously the Senate is a bit different in how their rules work, but you're obviously are relatively familiar with it, given that you're also in D.C. on the House side. But what is the what's going on with all of this? What is it that they did? And then help us understand the SAVE Act situation, because it seemed as if for a while they're like, oh, they got the votes to move forward with it, and then nothing's happening. What is going on with all of this?
So, the best way that I can explain it, so, in Missouri, when we do the Senate, when we bring a bill to the floor, and then you actually call the vote, the Democrats can filibuster, right? So they can stand up, but they have to stand up and talk. The tradition in the federal government is that in order to avoid the talking filibuster, they immediately move to, in Missouri, we would call it the previous question, but they call it the cloture vote on the federal level. So and here's where things they use it as a way of stopping debate and ending it and killing it. In Missouri, we would move to a previous question if we knew we had the votes to pass it. Does that make sense?
Right.
So they will either way they'll call cloture. Nobody has to debate. Nobody has to be wore down. And that's what we would do in Missouri. We would, if we had a bill, we would, and maybe we didn't have 18 votes to do the previous question motion. You would at least make them talk until somebody was blue in the face, and they'd say, "Okay, fine, we'll let you pass some part of this." That's not being done on the federal level, and as a result, and what what Thune is truly doing is covering for the people, the Republicans that don't want to be in this in a talking filibuster. He's not calling them out and calling their bluff. What he's kind of he's throwing the whole conference under the bus and saying, we don't have the votes.
Yeah.
What he's saying is we don't have the votes to do a quorum, to keep a quorum, right? So, but that's only true when you get into the debate.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were him, I'd get into the talking filibuster, and if the Democrats call quorum, and you'll see which Republicans show up and you'll see which Republicans don't, and then we can all know who to blame.
So do you get a sense that that's going to happen? Because I'm just trying to figure out at this point what the plan is, if there is one even. I mean, I suppose what the plan could be that they just don't do anything. What do you think's going to happen?
I think that there's a growing now need to do reconciliation, which was before. I don't know how much frustration that I've expressed to you on the show. That Republicans have this opportunity to do a reconciliation vote on the budget, but they have just been, they just want to retreat and go into the midterms and run on the one big beautiful bill, which is, there's a lot of wins and a lot of things you can run on, but there's still so much we can do. And the appetite to do that has not been there. This now is potentially going to force, the money that's not going to ICE or Homeland and the money that probably needs to be discussed and paid for as far as this conflict in Iran. All of that has to be hashed out. You're not going to fund the conflict, the money that the Department of War needs in just a basic supplemental passing. I don't think it'll pass. So I think you're going to have to go into reconciliation. When you go into reconciliation, you can cut things like cut all the fraud out of California and Minnesota and all of that, and use that to pay for the war supplemental. All of these things that are kind of popping up are forcing us to go into reconciliation to fix. But here's the problem. You cannot, there is no possible way to do the Save America Act in reconciliation, because reconciliation is a budget matter. All of the provisions of the Save America Act, which is voter registration, voter ID, that's not a budgetary item. And if you try to attach a budgetary item to it, the Senate parliamentarian is going to throw it out and say that doesn't fit the Byrd rule. So now they will claim that we can try to do that in reconciliation, but they're just, unless Thune is going to force the parliamentarian to accept it, he's just lying to you. He's gaslighting people.
Yeah. Explain what has occurred and the implications of the SAVE Act, where it appears as if they just did they sent it back over to you guys. Johnson on, I think it was Friday, acted like he was none too pleased about, or the Homeland Security funding, that there's no funding for and all that. And what's the story on that?
Okay, so the two issues, they were debating the Save America Act, and meanwhile we're in government shutdown for Homeland Security. Right. Okay, two separate issues, but kind of similar. The Save America, for what a weird reason, Thune thought he could get political cover by going to the debate, but really just letting he was not he had not called the bill, called the vote, which basically didn't force the Democrats to go talk about it. He just basically made Mike Lee and Mike Lee's friends go talk about it. And it was almost like trying to tire them out from the Republican side. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's crazy. It's usually done the opposite. You make the people that don't want to pass this have to go out and experience the pain. So It was a show. It was a complete show. It was failure theater. And then they just waited until 3 a.m. when no one was looking and no one was on the floor, and they did a pro forma, which a pro forma is a procedure where the president of the Senate can bring a bill up and call the vote. And if there's nobody there, then it passes unanimously. And so he basically, it was a really snaky move, really snaky. And so he called it up, passed, and what he didn't bring up was the Save America Act. He brought up the funding, a partial funding bill for Homeland, which has never happened before. They've never taken an appropriation bill and then dissected it and pulled out pieces and said, we're not funding this, we're not funding that, we're not funding this, we're not funding that. And so the pieces that they pulled out are pretty, the ICE agents, Customs Border Patrol, they pulled out I don't think they deliberately did, but they inadvertently pulled out the investigative unit for human trafficking and child sex trafficking. So we're not then they sent over to us this turd sandwich and expected us to vote for this.
Yeah. And
Freedom Caucus members, early that morning, we were all gathered in an office trying to figure out how do we convince, Mike Johnson to have the fortitude to kill this and fight back, because this was awful. I mean, literally not funding the agencies that investigates child sex trafficking is crazy. And so we had one member that was on the phone with the president. The president was very angry that the Senate had done this and was basically saying, you guys do what you do. I love the plan that you're looking to do. And what our plan was to take their bill, amend it, basically fund everything and send it back. And so we thought, okay, now we got to talk to Johnson. So we were texting Johnson. Andy Harris was calling Johnson, had a conversation, and Johnson expressed just as much frustration. And then we went to the microphones and said, this is what we need to do. We waited outside of Johnson's office. The press is all watching everything. They're all just hounding us, watching us as we're going to the speaker's office. And we have a meeting with the speaker, Steve Scalise, Majority Whip Emmer, and basically say, this is the only plan we have, because we cannot accept what the Senate did. So we did a 60-day CR and to pass that and send it back, which meant we had to stay all day and then really even fly out the next day in order to get that process work through the rules and get the vote late at night on Friday night. So that's where it stands. And today the Senate could take it up and do what they do really well, Nick, which is nothing.
Right.
So the Senate, these people are lazy. They're only they're doing nothing. Let them do nothing, and Thune can let this bill come up just like he did before and let it pass under a pro forma, and then the senators don't have to come back from their vacation. So that's what they should do. I don't know if that's going to happen, but we'll see.
All right. Anything else that?
Sorry, that was a mouthful.
Well, no, but that's
explain.
No, and it is. It's complicated. It's confusing, particularly when it appears as if you have folks in there deliberately trying to mislead people as to what they can and cannot do, which is the sense I get coming out of Thune's office and some of the Republican leadership in the Senate. There's an attempt to make sure people don't really necessarily understand exactly what's going on, so that certainly doesn't help. And it's why I appreciate you coming on and explaining that as you did. Anything else today?
I'm in the district. I'm going to try to meet with as many people and get as much done as I can, and try to get my taxes done before I have a chance. And then, we may very well get called back.
Okay.
But yeah, it's good to be home for a little bit.
Yep. All right, Congressman Burleson, thank you again. Appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 84. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 62. For your Tuesday, partly sunny with a high near 83. And taking a look at Wednesday, we'll see a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high near 81.
HunterHardscapes.com, not just hardscaping. Hardscaping, you may what is that exactly? You've heard of landscaping. Well, it's sort of the infrastructure, if you will. You got the pavers. We have the outdoor patio and the fire pit, sort of an area also for my Traeger grill and retaining wall that would fall under it. So it's that hardscape stuff, the really hard, permanent, in place stuff. Whereas your landscaping, your trees and your lawn and all of this may seem extremely obvious to you, but I just thought I'd mention it in case you did wonder. And they do all of these things, whether it is, the high-level maintenance. Maybe you have your own company and you really want that first impression for people who are coming to your storefront to be top-notch. I mean, in this day and age, you try to have every edge you can as an advantage to demonstrate you got your act together, and having that sort of appeal certainly can demonstrate just that. Or if it's for home, maybe you want an area to entertain people, or you need better drainage or lighting for your home. There's a lot that they do beyond just the hardscaping that I oftentimes talk with you about because of the work I've had done. And you can see all of it at hunterhardscapes.com, also under Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. I want to play audios. We had Congressman Burles on moments ago expressing his frustration with the so-called leadership in the Senate when it comes to dealing with the SAVE Act and funding of Homeland Security, specifically ICE agencies, and just what appears abundantly clear, the complete and utter collapse or failure of any sort of meaningful, proper leadership coming out of the Republican Party. Man, I'm telling you, I remember years and years and years ago, I think it was the state Lincoln days, and one of the keynotes was Thune, and he was this rising star. And I don't even remember what it was that he had been involved in, but back then I thought, I just do not think this guy is good for the direction of the Republican Party. And man, I feel like I really nailed that one. I wouldn't even remember it if it had not been for conversations around that time. Like, why did they pick this Thune guy? I do not get a good feeling about him. And all he manages to do is manage decline, as best I can tell, and the decline of Republican effectiveness as a party with its voters. And you get the people, like Congressman Burleson, who demonstrates his frustration. Also, Tim Burchett, he was on with which of the networks? May have been Fox, but what's really relevant is what he had to say about that lack of leadership over there in the Senate.
I think he made a huge mistake, ma'am. 83% of the population supports President Trump at Save America Act, which they should. He ignores that. He and you as a member of the media ought to be disgusted at the fact they passed that thing at 2:25 in the morning and left all the other senators kind of hanging. All he had to do is have 5 of his cronies on the floor. He cuts a deal with Schumer. Obviously, the leadership in the Senate, and that's on both sides of the aisle, has a real disgust for this president and House leadership because they didn't even have the guts to call Speaker Mike Johnson and let him know what happened. The whole deal of the stereotype of Congress is, and it's well deserved, is that we pass stuff in the dark of night because we don't have any guts, and that's clearly what's shown in the Senate leadership. I think they need to get some new leadership over there, in my opinion,
or leadership at all. Now, I do believe, as I mentioned earlier, I think there is leadership. It's just leading the wrong direction. It's leading the decline. And anytime you hear any of these Republican senators come out and talk about how they've got to set expectations and be more realistic, that is straight up loser talk. That is the talk of losers. It's fascinating to look back on the Republican characterization of Obama when it came to dealing with the United States in the international context. And he was really reamed because of the reference, and I don't know that there were words that came out of his mouth, but perhaps someone from the White House, that it was about managing decline. This was an area in which Trump really hit Obama, and this when he was running in 2016. And how we didn't have to decline as a nation, and he would turn that around. And you may recall Obama mocking Trump, saying, "Well, what's he going to do? Wave a magic wand and bring all these jobs back?" And Republicans really piled on that loser mentality for the country. The going around and apologizing and talking about resetting expectations, and that we have to get over this idea that the level of greatness we had once achieved was something that we could achieve again because it was this changing world. And, he was just celebrated by the media for having such a clear-eyed vision of things and an understanding of reality. And that's what true leadership was. Instead of being in denial, he was able to grasp that reality and help America through that decline from the leader of the free world to one of a global community. And some of the same Republicans that would criticize Obama for having such a loser attitude when it came to the United States as leader of the free world are the same ones that preside over the Republican Party with the same mentality and attitude. Running around telling us that they've got to manage expectations and we've got to understand, see, just because we're in charge of the Senate doesn't mean we're actually in charge of the Senate because we don't have enough votes. And they spend more time telling the people that they ask for them to, ask for their votes. They spend more time telling those voters why they can't do things as opposed to a rally cry in which hell or high water, even if we're going to lose this thing, we're going to fight as hard as we can. And we believe that we can get through it. We can do this thing. Sort of, the Trump attitude, the Trump mentality. And the frustration, I know many of you have it. And I know a lot of Republicans, I sense it with Congressman Burleson and some of these other members of Congress, their great frustration in being part of a party that is led by, in many ways, losers that are about losing and explaining why we can't get things done. That does not rally people to go vote for you. And frankly, for a lot of voters, they find it insulting that you ask for them to write a check, give a donation, go door to door, make phone calls on their behalf, put a sign in their yard so that you can get in there and start telling them, well, here, you just got to understand why I'm not actually going to be able to do the things that you elected me to do. And when we're talking about specifically the SAVE Act, an issue which over 80% of Americans support, the leader of the Republican Party in the Senate, which they have control, can't manage to get this done, then what good are you? Why should we bother? And I think Congressman Burleson's right. The attitude is, well, we'll just, hunker down and go out and campaign on the big, beautiful bill. I would venture to say, if you were to take 100 voters, disproportionately Republican at that, and ask them what was in the big, beautiful bill that really has made an impact, a positive impact on this country, that they would probably not be able to. I bet a majority wouldn't be able to give you an answer. And that doesn't mean that that's in line with reality. There are a lot of things that were in the big, beautiful bill that were very positive things, that are positive things. My point is, even right now at this stage, I don't know that the average Republican voter could even tell you what those things are. And the advice that I imagine is then given to Republicans, if that is a reality, is to go out and remind them. But it's like reminding of, oh, hey, this is what we did yesterday. So, but what about tomorrow? What about right now? What is going on right now? What are you doing right now? And the right now is siding with the left when it comes to this stuff like the SAVE Act. while telling us that you just can't do it. That is not a rally cry for anything other than there's really no point in you getting out and voting for us. The really unfortunate situation that this puts the Republicans in on the House side is they will be the ones, I think, that largely suffer because of that attitude that is coming out of the Senate right now. Not that Johnson's the strongest leadership or the strongest leader, not that he's some sort of really exciting voice that has laid out a clear and digestible future under another Republican term that is going to get the voter excited. But right now, what the real wet blanket is from the Senate. And Republican voters in particular that feel like if you can't get an 80-20 issue passed under your leadership, then why do we even come out? And the Senate feels relatively safe, even with that dampening of the Republican voter spirit. It's the House that really is probably going to bear the brunt of it in terms of the impact. And so this leading as a loser that we're getting out of Thune is certainly not going to make it any easier for Republicans to retain control of the House, which already we constantly get told it's an uphill battle, and they've written the obituary already, which that also doesn't help any. Yeah, there definitely needs to be new leadership in the Senate. And I tell you, another thing is it frustrates me to no end that these leadership votes in the Senate are done in secret and private, so we don't know how it is that our own senators vote when it comes to supporting these folks. I mean, unless they come out and publicly say it, but even then, who knows that you can trust them? It's not uncommon for these folks to make deals behind the scenes in which they tell the leadership, hey, listen, I'm going to vote for you, but you got to understand my constituency. I live in a really red state, and so they're going to expect me to vote for this person over here. So I'm going to be out there talking about how this person over here needs to be leader, but when it comes down to it, just so you know, I'm going to cast my vote for you. Those sorts of deals get made. Is that what happened? I have no idea. We just don't know. Streaming live, KSGF.com, the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447-KSGF. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. One of the many services that the Foreman team provides is mini split unit installs. Now, these are a really great option if you have a smaller home, maybe a small guest house, a garage, loft, you name it. They come with a great warranty package, and install it typically takes a day or two. Now, my parents, they live in a little farmhouse, and they just upgraded to a couple of mini splits last week, and they can already tell a tremendous amounts of difference. And Hey, if you're not in the market for a mini split, the Foreman team, they also do full unit installs and repairs, as well as LP propane gas line repairs and indoor air quality testing as well. So when it comes to your HVAC, they do a little bit of everything. If it is time to have the Foreman team out to your home, reach out to Russell and schedule your appointment today. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
All right. So some of your Pyramid Roofing Company text lines. Truth be told, it's not as much about Thune as it is the other members of the Senate, namely Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Mitch McConnell, and possibly Tillis of North Carolina, also Rand Paul on other issues. This is part of the long-term problem, and it's a problem that, to me, leadership, it becomes a frenemy problem. I've come to believe that oftentimes the Republican leadership demonstrates that they don't really want smaller government, lower taxes. And so it benefits them to have the bigger government Republicans in there to stop those things from happening. Because when it comes time to do something about it, I know Mike Johnson really talked about this as there was an attempt to get some meaningful stuff done in the big, beautiful bill. And he's like, we got to understand, we got these Republicans over here, and this guy over here is a hassle, and this one's a problem over here. But then Mike Johnson's the first one to go down and help that person get reelected in a primary. Or they will go ahead and funnel money to those people to help keep them in office. And then they bake in these excuses. Well, you got to understand, we got Murkowski over here, and, this has got Susan Collins over there, and we just don't have, we got the thin margins. We got the thin margins. And then because of these people over here, we just don't have enough in order to get across the finish line, but they help those people stay in office. And one can argue, well, listen, it's a numbers game. They've done the work, they've done the numbers, and they fear that if that person lost in a primary, that the newcomer that's more conservative would not be able to win in that district because it's a little blue or a little purplish. And so, but again, that's that expectations of being a loser, where you're just constantly explaining why we can't do the better things and why we have to reinforce those that sabotage us because, if we take a chance and get someone in there in the primary and outs the incumbent, then, we might lose it. And then Democrats will be in charge and we don't want that. And it's just, it's the approach of a loser. And I know I keep utilizing that term over and over again, but that is what happens. And that's how, because that is a legitimate point that, hey, Thune, he's the leader, but when you got Murkowski's and Collins in there, what are you going to do? Not help them get reelected? And I recognize that could mean, well, boy, if the numbers don't go your way, you could lose. Yeah. But again, that's the loser approach, not swinging for the fences sometimes. The left, they swing for the fences. That's how they get. This is why our country, regardless of who's in charge, always moves to the left to some degree. It's not as if we move a little bit to the left by, 3 degrees and then Republicans get in and then they go 6 the other way to get us back into the middle. We never, ever, ever get smaller government or lower taxes or less government. It always, no matter who is in charge, an expansion to some degree, though they may slow the expansion down. And that's going full circle back to the apathy that so many Republican voters end up getting and saying, well, what's the point? And your campaign slogan's really going to be, well, you think you're upset with me, think how bad it'll be if they're in charge. It's just not inspiring. A couple of you on the text line asking, what did they do at 3 a.m., the Senate? Another asking, did Schmidt and Hawley know what was in the bill sent to the House? We talked with Congressman Burleson about this earlier, and there's this way that the Senate rules work. It allows for there to have been a vote, even though there were only like 5 or 6 senators there at the time. I guess this was about 3 in the morning. And there were 5 senators on the floor to voice vote the DHS funding minus ICE and Border Patrol. You had Thune, Moreno, Schatz, Kim, and Schmidt. Those being the 5 senators that voted it. So Eric Schmidt, he clearly did know because he was one of the 5 senators, apparently, according to the reports on the floor at the time, that they voted unanimously to go ahead and send that back over to the House. Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome, everyone, to the show. My name is Nick Reed, hour number 3. Coming up this weekend, it is the Man Show Expo, a 2-day celebration of all things man, up to and including the ability to know what a man is. That should be a requirement, don't you think?
I like how you're reading this,
if
too.
You can't,
all things man.
If you are unable to define man, then you are automatically disqualified as being a man, as far as I'm concerned.
Not allowed in.
Not allowed in. You know what a man is? Yep, okay, you're in. You know what a man is? Well, there's a spectrum. Out. Ice cold Coors beer, mouth-watering barbecue from the Grill Guys Vegan Recovery Center. Moonshine beer, bourbon samples. Kinney's Billiard Game Room. Feel the adrenaline of the new Harley from Renegade Harley-Davidson. And witness Iron Alliance's live armored combat. Yes. You will be there, Sarah, from 10 to 12:30, and I will be there 12:30 to 2:30.
That is correct.
I'm there in the latter shift because I think it was just understood that drinking bourbon too early is just uncouth.
Yes.
And so
we tried to get you at the right time.
Yeah, and so being there at 12:30, it makes it legit. You can start hitting the moonshine without anybody. But hey, it's a man's show. So you got to be a man after all. Or you could be a woman. You just have to be able to know what a man is.
Yes, and I do. That's why I'm going.
You can be man or woman. You just have to be able to identify. Now, these aren't the official rules. I don't want anyone to get upset. Like, did you hear what he says? He says you have to agree. A man is a man. No, I'm just joking. Just joking around a little bit. But should be a good event. And we'll have Bush tickets to give away. They are touring, and you can register for those tickets. Now, we're out there Saturday, right? Mm-hmm. And the event is Friday and Saturday?
Yes.
Okay, so the ticket registration will be on Saturday.
Yes. You got it.
All right, I got her all nailed down. By Friday, I should know it all accurately without having to read. We shall see. We will not have happy hour this Friday, being Good Friday. And then actually Monday also, we will have best of, which will include the interviews that I had with the CEO of Visit Springfield and the mayor of Springfield on a separate interview, along with presiding commissioner of Greene County, Bob Dixon, as they all, from their own perspectives, talked about why they believe or would like for you to vote yes on the tax vote, which will be the next day, to fund the convention center. So that's just some programming notations for you as we are just a week away and a day, and we do have sample ballots at ksgf.com. Correctamundo?
Yes, sponsored by Brad Pistol and Safe Money Radio.
Yay. All right, we're going to do a news update here and then get traffic and weather. And I want to play some audio from a number of No Kings rallies that took place across the country. I don't think there was any violence reported at the Springfield one. Unfortunately, a number of these different rallies did have a degree of violence and a call to assassinate members of ICE. Call for, Trump.
So peaceful.
Yeah, mostly peaceful. One of the things Scott Jennings notes is the different flags, like Hamas flags, terrorist flags at some of these. And it's amazing how those get dismissed as irrelevant because that isn't the overriding theme of these events. But, man, if it was a Trump event in which, people were standing with Trump flags and American flags and you had a few Nazi flags in there, oh, boy, I mean, that would be the lead. That would be proof of Trump, and he actually is a Nazi. Look, his supporters aren't even afraid to show it anymore. They don't even try to hide it. Yet when you have left-wing rallies and they have terrorist flags that they're waving around in the air, well, now you can't, that doesn't count. I mean, of course you're going to get a few people in there that are just bad apples, and it's not fair to characterize the entire movement that way. Oh, okay. It's always good to get the ground rules out when we evaluate this behavior. So we'll have some of that audio coming up. Now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 84. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 62. For your Tuesday, partly sunny with a high near 83. And taking a look at Wednesday, a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high near 81.
Okay. I'm still trying to figure out if the left thinks Trump is a king or isn't a king. This is becoming very confusing. Where's the story here? Got a number of the no king stories. Let's see here. Senator Mazie Hirono trolled for admitting Trump is not a king and never has been. She's the Democrat from Hawaii, made the following post on social media. This was X. Quote, Donald Trump is not, never will be, and never has been a king. Hashtag no king. What is the no king stuff about again? So he isn't, right? We fully acknowledge that. I'm very confused. Do you people on the left know what it is you're doing? Do you have any idea what you're talking about? When some of these people are asked what Trump has done or why it is they're protesting against him, generally the answers fall in one of two categories. Either something is just straight up not true, or something that, quote, may happen under Donald Trump. Well, I'm just worried that my rights as a woman are going to be taken away. So it's nothing that actually has happened. It's just you worry that it might happen. Everything is either an imaginary fear that hasn't happened, but it could. Oh, it could happen. Or it's something that actually didn't happen when they claim that it did. There was one guy locally that said that I don't know if I'll play the story or not, but it was a story interviewing some of these people, and he claimed that he is protesting against Trump because Trump cut off all funding for cancer research. Now, first off, you can't do that anyhow because there's a lot of private funding for it. Now, this is based off misinformation that when it came to Doge and stuff, that he cut off cancer research funding, which wasn't true. Now, we shouldn't need it because I remember Joe Biden telling us that if he got elected president, he would cure cancer. That was one of his big promises. Incidentally, he was never mocked for that promise. He was never fact-checked on that promise. It was never reported in the context of him not giving any or providing any evidence that he could actually do it. When he claimed it, there were no experts when it came to cancer research to talk about the unrealistic nature of, quote, curing cancer within his term, as Biden said that he would do. No, none of that whatsoever. It was just an amazing thing for him to do. It's so how caring he was and how compassionate and how wonderful his presidency would be. So we shouldn't, if Biden was the wonderful, honest president that the No Kings people want to believe, we shouldn't even have to have any cancer research. But we do. This is frankly why with non-serious people, we can't have more effective and efficient funding. Because what Doge oftentimes tried to do is while it found some dollars that were a complete and total waste of money, some of the dollars were being allocated in a way that was less efficient for the cause itself. And so the cause would not benefit. And when you had a number of these different institutions that were taking what was supposed to be cancer research money and blowing it on DEI crap, yeah, that's where Trump stepped in and was like, no, that is supposed to be going to cancer research, not DEI crap. And if there was any sort of organization or institution that was the recipient of those dollars, they risked losing them to other organizations that would put all of it towards actual cancer research, not DEI stuff. So for those who claim that they care so much about cancer research funding should have been fully supportive of Trump's efforts in order to make sure those dollars actually went fully to cancer research, not social programs like DEI. But this is what I'm talking about when I say these people who give answers as to why it is they're against Trump. The answers are either just flat out disinformation or it's about something that hasn't happened, but it could happen. You know, some of these idiots were marching through the streets. I don't know that it happened here, but I think in Nashville and maybe some other city, you had some of these idiots dressed in the red from Handmaid's Tale, apparently not realizing that the inspiration for that book was the Islamic terrorist regime taking over Iran in the late 70s. You know, the thing that Trump's undoing? These people are just idiots. They have no concept of reality. They don't even understand the symbolic references they're making oftentimes are the exact opposite of what it is that they claim that they are supposed to be about. Scott Jennings over on CNN referencing his take on what America got to see on full display with these No King protests across the country.
No Kings rallies actually look pretty representative to me of the Democratic coalition. I saw people flying the hammer and sickle in New York City. I saw Hezbollah flags. I saw Hamas flags. I saw Palestinian flags. I saw trans signs. I see weirdo liberal boomers out there. This is pretty representative of the Democratic coalition, and that's who funds it as well, by the way. And so I think if America looks at this and says, what do the two parties stand for? They got it at the No Kings rally.
No, I think if you Americans were out there, Republicans.
You like hammer and sickle? You like hammer and sickle flags?
That's not what that No King stood for.
They had a bunch of them.
That, and that is
they come from somewhere.
Out there.
A lot of
Thanks.
Now, so you see how this works. Scott Jennings referencing the reality of what was seen at these No King rallies across the country, noting that, among others, you got the terrorist flag of Hezbollah, you've got the hammer and sickle, the evils of communism, on full display by way of a flag. And what is the response of the left-wing panelist there on CNN? It is to deny that has anything. Oh, that's not a representation. Oh, no, that doesn't count. Oh, it doesn't count, does it? Now, you and I both know what would occur if at just one Trump rally you had, out of thousands and thousands of people, one person had a Nazi flag. That would be a full representation of Trump supporters admitting who they really are. But because it's their cause and they recognize that to the average American, particularly I'd say blue-collar workers that have trended away from the Democrat Party towards Donald Trump, see these images, they see the support for terrorist organizations, the left knows that they have to downplay it and pretend as if that is in no way, shape, or form a representation of the No Kings. Though if you are to ask any of them, what is the what is No Kings? Again, it's filled with a lot of, well, I'm worried that this may happen, or just straight up false information. Now, he referenced all the money behind this, and this is not organic stuff. A lot of the people involved think it's organic. They don't know. They have no idea that the social media postings that the foundation laid in order to get all of these rallies up and going were huge amounts of money, oftentimes from the very sort of billionaires they claim that they hate. They don't understand that they're pawns of that system. Or as some would reference it, useful idiots. A network of about 500 groups with an estimated $3 billion in combined annual revenues is behind the nationwide No Kings protest that took place Saturday, including communist groups who are using the day to call for a revolution, according to an investigation done by Fox Digital. According to a copy of the actual permit for the flagship march in St. Paul, Minnesota, Indivisible, a national, well-heeled Democratic political advocacy organization funded by billionaire George Soros, is the lead coordinator of the protest across the country. White billionaire, once again, and all of these little useful idiots going out to do their bidding. Billionaire pawns, puppets of the elite, and not even knowing it. Also identified key participation by a network of radical socialist and communist organizations funded by Neville Roy Singham, an American tech tycoon and avowed communist living in China. A country that actually has oppression, has actual slavery and concentration camps. Over nearly a decade, Singham has financed a constellation of activist institutions that promote revolutionary socialist politics and frequently collaborate in protest campaigns, including the People's Forum in New York, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the Answer Coalition, and Code Pink, whose co-founder Jody Evans is married to Singham. These groups work closely with the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. They are all sending members to the protest, and one group said they plan to bring the message of revolution to the protesters. Posters reading "No Kings, No War," with Party for Socialism and Liberation printed at the bottom. Activists stacked the signs upside down with their wooden picket handles attached as they loaded them into the vehicles, preparing to distribute them in the next day's main protest at the state capitol, that one in St. Paul. Across the country, similar preparations have been underway among socialist, communist, and Marxist activist groups from the Singham network that have openly discussed using the demonstrations to spread what they describe as revolutionary organizing. Big money. Money can buy a lot of protesters, and generally you can tell when they're bought and paid for because they can't answer simple questions. Gateway Pundit has a number of videos of, we'll get these posted. One, an unhinged liberal woman clucking and wearing a full chicken costume at a No Kings Los Angeles rally. Protesters in Fort Worth, Kansas City, and other locations wore the Handmaid's Tale outfit during their marches again. A story that, because in their delusional mind, that was the story, a warning for someone like Donald Trump. When in fact it was inspired by the loss of freedoms in Iran during the late 70s. The guy that they're out, this is how just twisted these people are. The person they're protesting against is the person that is reversing the Handmaid's Tale in Iran. What was the inspiration by her own accord? The author of that book, in interviews in the past, talking about how that is what inspired her story, was the takeover of the Iranian government by the Islamists. The people that Trump is responsible for going after. Yet the anti-Trump people are dressing as handmaids. They're so screwed up in the heads. They are such useful idiots. They have no idea. Other Democrat activists hoping to be taken seriously at the No Kings rally were dressed as everything from frogs, unicorns, lobsters, and dinosaurs. And then, of course, you have, this is one of my favorites. Let's see here. These are the folks that you imagine they're reliving their youth from the 60s. The senior citizens that once felt that they were relevant and really making a difference by coming out against the establishment. And so they're having an opportunity to revisit their youth, and they can't help themselves but try and making the protest song relevant again. I can tell you, whatever you're visualizing, this is what it looks like.
Oh, I see it.
And what's funny is he kept going. You're gonna hear it went on for a long while. He'll start a new. See that speak up while you still can. It's the contradiction.
She just stopped.
No, he went on. The video was almost, I think, 3 minutes long. I don't even know how it ended. But if you notice, even the chant there is, speak up while you still can. See, they're acknowledging that they are able to speak up. This, as many of us have noted, the contradiction of this entire no kings, no dictators nonsense is the fact that they are out there doing this shows that they are not in a reality that they think that they're in, which is why they have to change it up. It's almost like when we talked earlier in the show, the left changed from global warming to climate change because what they were talking about was inconsistent with the narrative. And, the narrative of we live under a dictatorship, we live under King Trump, but then able to go out and protest against him because that's a contradiction. So now they're starting to change. Well, it's not about what he's doing now, but it's what he might do in the future. Yeah, that's it. He might put us in camps and prevent us from being able to sing our songs. When, ironically, it's the Trump supporter that does more to get this nonsense out there by filming these people. They don't understand how absurd they sound and how absurd they look. And so the most traction they get on the internet is when Trump supporters post it for the world to see. Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks' first meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 84. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 62. For your Tuesday, partly sunny with a high near 83. And for Wednesday, a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high near 81.
Ozarks elder law, very important that you consult with those folks if you do not have some sort of plan in place for your own demise, that of a loved one, power of attorney situations. If you believe simply being married somehow grants that to you, particularly in Missouri, you definitely need to reach out. Oftentimes, hospitals will defer to families to make those sorts of decisions, but they certainly don't have to. Government ultimately gets to make those decisions. Also, whether or not you have to pay for your own nursing home, how can you prepare for that? There are little things that you can do that are perfectly legal. I mean, they're set up to help you get back some of those tax dollars at times that you spent your entire life putting into the system when it comes to the need for assisted living. But what is so often the obstacle is cost, to find out what you need to do, right? You think about attorneys and billable hours and how much is it going to cost just to find out what I need to do. That is why Ozarks Elder Law waives the fee, so that is not an obstacle for you. Then you find out what it is that you need to do and the exact cost to have it done. Then you get to make the decision. And that involves a consultation, 10 area locations. You set up a time, and they're going to give you a little bit of, quote, homework to do. In other words, some things that you will need to bring for that consultation so they can make meaningful direction for you and really let you know here's what needs to be done and here's what it'll take to do it. Again, all of that is a courtesy, and that way cost or potential cost is not an obstacle to find out what you need to do to make sure you and your family is secure. OzarksElderLaw.com. So No Kings protester in Los Angeles graffitis "Kill Your Local ICE Agent" on a federal building in Los Angeles as No Kings rioters clashed with federal agents throwing concrete blocks, 75 being arrested. That would be considered, again, mostly peaceful. Daily Caller noting that No Kings protest descended into chaos across multiple cities as demonstrators attacked federal officers and a faction in New York City openly called for communist revolution. I mean, like, by definition, communism is essentially a king. You have a dictator in charge. Do you folks on the left not understand? I mean, I think some of you don't know any better. You've just been thrown into a giant barrel of lunatics, and you have no idea what's going on. You just know that you've been told to hate Donald Trump. You can't really name anything he's done to you or how you've lost any rights, so you're just afraid of what might happen one day, theoretically, and you get thrown in with this lot of people that want dictatorships. They're openly calling for dictatorships. That's what communism is. Then you have the rich white liberals who do not have to suffer the economic consequences of Democrat policies, like Robert De Niro attending the demonstrations, communist chants to bring down the system. In Los Angeles, the Department of Homeland Security said roughly 1,000 agitators encircled the Roybal Federal Building and pelted officers with rocks, bottles, and concrete blocks. And where's all the footage of that? I've seen a lot of footage. Across this country of relatively peaceful events occurring. Why is there some sort of censorship underway, self-imposed, I'm sure, obviously, to make sure Americans don't see the ugly side of the No Kings protesters? Two DHS officers required medical attention. First Assistant U.S. Attorney Bill Esseley warned that anyone who assaulted law enforcement would face federal felony charges. Violence erupted outside Portland's ICE facility after daytime rallies ended. Video captured masked protesters wrestling DHS officers off their feet while others hurled objects at law enforcement. Portland police arresting 3 people on assault and criminal mischief charges, including a 26-year-old man who scaled the building's roof. Democrat demonstrators breached the facility's front gate and burned an American flag, because patriotism. In Dallas, police intervened to keep No Kings demonstrators apart from pro-America counter-protesters after the groups clashed. The New York Post reported officers arrested at least 1 protester as both sides traded obscenities. Saturday was the third No Kings mobilization since June of 2025, and we still, I don't know, based on who you talk to, we still do have a king or we still don't have a king. Because this appears to be a point of confusion in which Trump is a king, which is why they are rallying against him. But then on the other hand, they get out there and chant Trump's not a king, he never will be a king. And so it's a very confusing time for people on the left. Anti-Trump protesters screaming abolish the police as police assist their march through the city. Several No Kings protesters chanted anti-police slogans Saturday while uniformed officers were ushering their march through the streets of Washington to make sure that they would be safe. This is the piece of trash these people are. So here you have these officers that are there doing their duty to make sure that they can protest safely while these Democrat activists scream about abolishing them. Just total and complete trash. Meanwhile, I thought this was great. There was another event that took place. This was a rally in Florida. I think this was Tuesday of last week.
De parte de la ciudadanía, de parte del hombre, primero Dios. Pero aquí en realidad el que hizo pasar esto, el que organizó esto fue.
Now, this was a rally. You could hear it was a sea of people, thousands of protesters that had gathered Tuesday night in Hawaii, Florida, waving Cuban flags and chanting Libertard as they called for political change on the island, oftentimes utilizing Trump as the symbolism of freedom. The Free Cuba rally, hosted by the city and the Cuban Anti-Communist Foundation, brought together Cuban Americans from across South Florida who said that the Trump administration has created new hope for the people looking for freedom in Cuba. The city said the turnout was over 8,000 people. Quote, I was born in this country, but to me, this means everything, said Patty Gonzalez, a Cuban-American who attended the rally with her family. I just want to see my dad's country free. Now, isn't this an interesting side-by-side? People who have actually experienced a true dictatorship. Let's just look at that for a moment. Venezuela had a dictator. Cuba has a dictator. The Iranians had 1, 2, 3, a succession of a number of dictators that one after another was getting killed off over the last several weeks. People who have lived under an actual dictator. Whose name do they chant in the name of hope and freedom? It's Trump. Now, I understand some people may feel that, hey, it's none of our business, and Trump should not be utilizing his position as an executive to liberate people across the world from dictatorships. Aside from that, this gives you a sense of how upside down and twisted the Democrats have become in this country. When all over the world, when you have people who have lived under actual dictatorships, true, legit, straight-up dictators. When they talk about Donald Trump, it is of what hope, what inspiration, what wonderful things that he has done in liberating people from dictatorships across this country. But if you listen to Democrats here, no, Donald Trump is the dictator. And Donald Trump loves dictators. This was one of the campaign themes. They tried to almost play it off as some unusual obsession and kindredship that Donald Trump has with dictators. And there's no one that these dictators would rather see in the White House than Donald Trump. Well, clearly that isn't true. And it's so unfortunate that the media does not take the opportunity to note the stark differences and the fact that people who live in a free nation, who are able to go out and to protest, all based off of either disinformation about Trump or things that he, quote, might do in the future. I mean, what an opportunity for a town hall meeting. CNN loves to do these town hall meetings when there's a shooting. And so, well, let's get up on stage some people that are traditionally pro-Second Amendment, and then let's get the parents of dead kids up there to have a discussion about this. Where are the town hall meetings to have people who have lived under dictatorships in Venezuela, Iran, Cuba, who have made it here to the United States, to sit on stage with people who claim that Donald Trump is a dictator and have a real conversation about what dictatorships look like? Now, we know why that doesn't occur. Because it's reality. And it runs counter to the media's narrative that when you talk to people, have conversations with individuals who, many of which risk their own lives to come live in the United States. And you really saw some of those videos that were, I think for most people, from a humanitarian standpoint, pretty touching. People from Venezuela who had escaped here, and just the tears of joy, the weeping, adults weeping when they learned that they had been freed from the dictator that wasn't even, I mean, he didn't even win the election. He just took over the country. And it makes these no king people just seem disgusting to me. The level of ungratefulness, the spoiled, entitled, privileged attitude, the audacity to claim that you somehow live under an authoritarian dictatorship when people like that exist on this planet who actually have been through those horrors, who have actually had family members disappear or executed because their political behavior or because they're homosexual. I have to tell myself a majority of these people that go out there and protest believing that this is oppression in this country really truly are ignorant. Because if they're not, that is a very, very, very bad sign for the Democrat Party today, that you would have that many people so depraved and privileged and spoiled that in a world in which people really truly live under actual dictatorships, or China, for example, where they have concentration camps and slavery is legal and all of these other things go, and to have the audacity to whine about being under a dictatorship in America, it'd be like complaining to no end about a headache in the presence of someone with terminal cancer. Like, are you serious? You really are going to complain about a headache? When there are people that have terminal diseases around you, but that's what these no kings people are. Their headache is Donald Trump. They don't like him. So they're going to pretend as if they have some sort of terminal disease, and the only cure is to get rid of Donald Trump. It's the epitome of selfishness. And it's not a pretty look. And Sarah Myers.
Thank you, Springfield Livestock Marketing Center. It's Monday.
Did you get that horse over the weekend?
No.
You didn't get Clip Clop?
No, I didn't get Clip Clop.
Oh,
well, that
man.
was supposed to be Christy's
yeah.
horse.
Yeah, that's right.
I bet she didn't get Clip Clop either.
No,
womp womp.
Probably not.
I'm gonna convince her one of these days to go out there and get something.
Well, she's got the lamb for it.
She does. Yep. We're going to get her something, but hey, it's Monday, which means that it's Cow and Bull Sale Day. That sale will start at 10 a.m. And they will also host a feeder sale on Wednesday at 9 a.m. And on Saturday, they will host a special 4-state Angus sale. That sale will start at 12:30 p.m. So what you're hearing is a busy week, like always, at the Springfield Livestock. Now, if you can't make it out to any of the sales, but you want to attend, they offer live streaming options and online bidding as well. And if you want to sell and you need help hauling the Springfield Livestock, they have field reps from Bolivar to Crane and everywhere in between. Now, to check out other upcoming sales, visit their Facebook page or website, springfieldlivestock.com. And of course, you can find all of their contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Some text messages on the Pyramid Roofing Company text line. These old hippie retreads make me embarrassed to be a senior citizen. Now, don't be embarrassed. You're not one of them. Another saying, that woman's singing voice made me wish we had a king. Presuming the desire there would to put a stop to it. Let's have a no freaks protest.
I like that one.
I like that one too. No freaks protest. That's pretty good. You know what I watched? I had not planned on watching it, but I think it must have been Friday, and the wife was like, "What do you want to watch?" And she was scrolling through, and the Melania documentary popped up. I said,
"How was it?"
I said, "Let's watch that." I enjoyed it. Now, let me tell you, I enjoyed it strictly for me from a just behind the scenes how a lot of this stuff plays out perspective. For me, it wasn't like, if you really are a huge fan of Melania Trump, then you're gonna like it. If you hate Melania Trump, you're not gonna like it. I obviously don't hate her. I think she has been the single most bullied public figure for absolutely no reason whatsoever other than to whom she is married. You can't find anything she's ever said bad about anyone or hit out at anyone, yet she just relentlessly gets attacked by the left. But just taking out even any sort of favorable feeling about her, I found it to be interesting leading up to the inauguration and the planning for it. One of the things I did find actually to be, because Trump's in it quite a bit. He was in it more than I thought he would be. And he was going over remarks that he was going to be making during the inauguration. Remember, it was inside this time around?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he was referencing like bringing everyone together in unity or something. And she told him, you need to add this in here. Like she was off, kind of sit on the side of the room, and she says, and unity or something. And he he's like, I don't know. Well, then it shows him giving his speech, and he added in what she told him. He turns around and smirks at her. Like he does a full body turnaround and looks at her off to the side. And, she kind of smiles back. And I thought it was a neat little moment in it. But I just thought it was really interesting, the planning of things and the dinners and the balls and that take place around inauguration. So, you don't, I'll put it this way, you don't have to be a huge Melania Trump fan at all to find it enjoyable, because I did. I found it, and I'm not a fan of hers, but I just thought from a strictly behind the scenes, here's how some of this stuff plays out perspective, it was pretty interesting. So I'd recommend it if you get a chance. I don't. It didn't cost us anything because we have Amazon Prime, so it's easier to make the recommendation if it doesn't cost anything. I think it's just called Melania.